Welcome back to Hardball. Newly released audio recordings of Donald Trump from 2005 have prompted the candidate himself to issue a rare statement which, for the first time in this campaign, included something close to an apology for past remarks. Republicans this evening are condemning Trump for his words. Senator Kelly Ayotte of New Hampshire told NBC News his comments are totally inappropriate and offensive. Senator Jeff Flake tweeted that America deserves far better than Donald Trump. And Jeb Bush just tweeted his reaction to the Trump audio tape. He writes, quote, "As the grandfather of two precious girls, I find that no apology can excuse away Donald Trump's reprehensible comments degrading women." Well, all this with just 48 hours to go before the second presidential debate Sunday night. I'm joined right now by MSNBC's Joy Reid, host of AM Joy, as well as former Republican Congresswoman Michele Bachmann of Minnesota. Congresswoman, thank you for coming on tonight. It's a difficult night, and we talked about this earlier this evening. How does Trump deal with this, and what will the impact be between now and Sunday night when it will be an issue on national television?
Well, that's actually the point. Hillary Clinton wanted to make sure that this is what America would be talking about. So they did their opposition research. This is what they had. But quite honestly, I think that when it comes to Sunday night, you're going to hear Donald Trump talking about the issues. No matter how this comes up, she wanted to make sure Anderson Cooper or someone in the audience brings this up. But quite honestly, I think she had a really bad news day herself. She has a lot of bad news with what's coming out about the contents of her speech to Wall Street that aren't going to work real well for her base. But more importantly, more of the document dump happened today. And we found out, for instance, that she kicked off her State Department, her government security detail off of her government plane and instead put Clinton Foundation people on her plane. This doesn't look real well for her. So she has to change the narrative, and that's what she's trying to do. So it's pretty predictable. So how do you, and if she wants to talk about scandals, Sunday can be about scandals, but quite honestly, it's got to be about us, about the American people, because this is what we've got to look at. How are we all going to have better lives? And I think that's probably where Donald Trump is going to take the debate on Sunday night. Where did you get the information? It may be true, but where did you get the information, Congresswoman, that Hillary Clinton did this to op research, this stuff on the audio tapes, the sex tapes about Trump? How did you know? How do you know that she did it? Experience. How do you know? Experience. What do you mean experience? This is how the whole thing works. I mean, well, you're laughing, but how do you know? Like is this like some shock that on Friday afternoon that there's going to be this story to make sure that this is what Anderson Cooper talks about on Sunday morning? Of course, this is how it's done. Of course. It's just as predictable as the day is long. This is her narrative that she's tried to feed the media because she doesn't want anyone to talk about, I mean, the honest to goodness fact that in real time over a 4-year period, she betrayed America's most sensitive national security secrets to our enemies. Okay, you're throwing all that in there now. That's not what she wants to talk about. But you don't know, in other words. You just be honest with me, Congresswoman. You don't know how this story got to the Washington Post. You don't know. Well, how would I know how it got there? Well, you just said you knew. It's more than a, no, I didn't. It's more than a wink and a nod to know that this clearly came from the opposition research, people who were trying to help Hillary Clinton. But I think the more important thing is this woman has proved herself absolutely incapable of being commander-in-chief. What did you make of Trump's words on that tape? Nobody has ever been a Benedict Arnold to this country the way she has been. Let's talk about what we all know for sure, which is what Donald Trump said in that audio tape. What do you make of it? Well, this is bad boy talk, and of course that's what she wants everybody to talk about. She doesn't want anybody to talk about her betrayal of America's national security secrets. What was your reaction as a voter? That's like a real issue. It's not a problem for you as a voter. That's going to impact every single American. I mean, if anybody understands bad boy talk, Hillary Clinton understands bad boy talk. She engages in a certain amount of it herself, I think. So this doesn't affect your voting? Pardon? My voting? Are you kidding? Absolutely not. I want to make sure there's jobs in this country again, and there's only one candidate that will do that, and that's Donald Trump. Well, fair enough. You told me what I wanted to hear. Let me go to Joy Reid on this. Impact statement, please. Tonight, Sunday night, to Tuesday, we have the election a month from now. What's the impact statement of this new audio tape information?
Well, it's hard to believe that this won't come up, obviously, on Sunday. But just to go back on a few things that the Congresswoman said, you know, Donald Trump started this news day re-attacking the Central Park Five, something that's gotten lost in the news cycle, and claiming again that these 5 exonerated men who were put in prison when they were teenagers were guilty, reopening that wound. That's sure to come up on Sunday. And you talk, Congresswoman, about opposition research. I'm wondering why the Republican Party didn't do opposition research on Donald Trump. His fellow 16 candidates during the primary apparently maybe should have done some opposition research. Maybe they would have found this. On the question of this allegedly coming from the Clinton campaign, this actually came from David Fahrenthold, who is an incredible reporter at the Washington Post. I doubt the Clinton campaign had access to audio tapes from Access Hollywood, but obviously this dogged reporter actually found it. And my last point that I would make to the Congresswoman, who's really quickly dismissed these comments and vaulted over to a series of talking points about Hillary Clinton, you, Congresswoman, back on August 30th, of this year, said on a show called The Brody File that God had raised up Donald Trump, that Donald Trump had been raised up by God to be the Republican nominee. And you went on to say that God lifts up who he will and takes down who he will. So it seems to me that just based on your own past statements, this was either done to Donald Trump by himself, by David Fahrenthold, by somebody at Access Hollywood, or by God. And I'd wonder if you now believe that God has taken down who he will.
You don't have to respond to that. Not about the God part. Your religion is your own personal belief, but I think Joy's being rhetorical. But go ahead, respond. I'm not comfortable with the theological discussions. Go ahead, myself. Go ahead.
Well, I think quite clearly what is going to happen on the first Tuesday in November, people are going to take a really strong look at where America is at and where they want America to be, not just in a broad way, but for them personally. And we've seen a dramatic drop in income. We've seen a huge tax increase in the form of Obamacare. It's wildly unpopular. That's what people are worried about. They're also extremely nervous about terrorism. They've seen the failures under Hillary Clinton with that, and with her failed Russian reset. Yeah. Those are the kind of things people are going to be thinking about. She doesn't want people to think about that, Mrs. Clinton. She wants them to think about the nonsense. But when push comes to shove, we've really got to take this election seriously, and I think the American people will.
But we call it news, and everything you just said, Congresswoman, we knew 2 or 3 hours ago. Everything you've talked about, terrorism, the usual stuff that the Republicans talk about. They talk about the email, and they talk about Benghazi. You know, everybody's been talking about that, and they knew all that. That's all baked into the cake. What's new are these tapes. Here's the RNC chairman, Reince Priebus, just released a statement on the Trump audio tape. Quote, "No woman should ever be described in these terms or talked about in this manner ever." That's a pretty strong statement, Joy, by the leader of the party.
And I totally get your point, you know, absolutely. And the leader of the party is in a very awkward position. Reince Priebus is supposed to stand on stage with Donald Trump not long from now, along with the Speaker of the House of Representatives, along with and I hate to bring it up again, the evangelical governor of Wisconsin. And the only reason I bring it up, Chris, is that one of Donald Trump's bulwarks, the reason that he's still in the 40s, is he's managed to hold together much of that 3-legged stool of the Republican Party, including evangelicals. And not only the Congresswoman, who has herself proactively put Donald Trump's candidacy in evangelical terms, that is part of what's holding Donald Trump up. And one of the risks that you're seeing, Charlie Sykes was tweeting about this earlier, is that comments like this have to be explained in the very churches, in the very evangelical households that are supporting Donald Trump more than almost anybody else. So I'm wondering if you get home into that household where a husband and wife and their daughters are sitting down talking about this election, who've been strongly for Donald Trump and who have evangelicized his candidacy, put it in God terms, how do those parents go to the polls and explain to their daughters that this is okay?
Congresswoman, I like it phrased just that way, not your theological thinking, but what do you think people will react to have these religious beliefs? Go ahead.
Well, again, if you go back to the 90s, look at what parents had to talk about with Mrs. Clinton's husband, which nobody wanted to talk about. They'd shut their TVs off. It was so bad. It wasn't words, it was actions. And that's not where we want to be. I don't think anybody wants to deal with all that, because quite honestly, that's people's personal business. What we really do want to talk about is what a president will do for us or to us. And I think that's where Mrs. Clinton actually was recklessly dangerous to the United States. She's the one who's unfit to be commander-in-chief. Donald Trump is going to rebuild our economy and our military. That's more important to me, and I think to a lot of evangelical households.
Well, let's all read the papers tomorrow morning. I think Joy's point of view is going to be in the paper tomorrow morning. I don't think it's going to be about these other issues. And, of course, Joy, I do believe in God and
that's
intervention and all those things. I agree with sort of the same line of thinking that Michele Bachmann has, so I don't want to disparage it, but I think it's the sectarian thing you're after there, which is not her beliefs, but what people like her believe in, how that's going to affect their voting. That's comfortable territory for both of us. Joy, thank you so much. Have a nice weekend. Michele Bachmann, Congresswoman, thanks for coming on tonight. It's a tricky night, a tricky bit of news, I think, for all of us. Anyway, we're going to continue to get reaction to tonight's bombshell news. The audio recording from 2005 of Donald Trump in a vulgar conversation about women. The Hardball Roundtable's coming here next. That's ahead. And this is Hardball. We'll be right back.